Hello everyone, so today I'll be making a book review of August Strindberg's Inferno. And I'm really excited for it because I'm Swedish and Strindberg is our biggest Swedish author and I really love him, and this so happens to be my favorite book of his. The context behind this book, it was published in 1897, so just this time in European history around the year 1900s. The years just before the First World War. I think it's one of my favorite time periods in European history. It was this explosion of creativity in art, in writing and music. There are a bunch of different isms such as symbolism, impressionism, expressionism, political ideas such as socialism, anarchism, just this myriad of this creative explosion. Basically, something common within painting and literature is this break with realism and naturalism. So since the Renaissance, the whole purpose, especially of art, was depicting the external world as it is. You're trying to depict it as accurately as possible, as realistically as possible. You see this in the Renaissance, this perfect imitation of human anatomy. But with the late 1800s, artists starts to go in different directions. Instead of depicting the external world as it is, as one does in realism and naturalism, one instead starts to turn inwards into the inner subjective world, no longer describing in literature and art the world as it is to the eye, but how it is experienced by a personal subject. And as an example of this, you can think of the famous painter Claude Monet and Van Gogh. They are not trying to paint the world as it is to the eye, as it is actually there in the external world. They're painting the world as they experience it. That's why they have so much color, because they experience this world as this beautiful, colorful place filled with emotions. They are painting the world as experienced through their own personal subjectivity. So what is the book about? The book is basically autobiographical. It describes Strindberg's time in Paris alone. So he's just left his wife after this disastrous marriage and moved to Paris. He's also moved there because he's been this famous author and well-loved author in Sweden, but after a bunch of controversies, he is suddenly hated by the public, and then he goes on this self-imposed exile just to get away from everything, from society, from his disastrous marriage. So in Paris, let's just say he has a troubled time. He descends into a personal inferno of complications, and one of these things is actually you could say a midlife crisis, a religious crisis, but also he's bordering on insanity, literally. And one of these symptoms of this insanity or this religious crisis is that through his period in Paris, he's trying to make gold. So during the day, he's wandering the streets of Paris, sitting at cafes, drinking absinthe, just wandering around the streets like a ghost. And at night, with the descent of darkness, he goes back to his hotel room and he's trying to make gold. And from these experiments, his hands all cracked up, they're bleeding from the experiments. He's just a mess. So what's this all about, making gold? That sounds pretty strange to our ears. But actually, as I was saying before, this time in European history, you had this creative explosions with a bunch of different movements. And one of these cultural movements was a renewed interest for esotericism and the occult. And so he's actually, in this book, he describes reading Helena Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, which was this sort of the pioneering work of this new occult movement in Europe. So these thoughts of esotericism combined with his sort of chaotic life makes Strindberg convinced, and is also a symptom of maybe his insanity, that he is being followed and persecuted by invincible evil forces in his time in Paris, and they are the cause to why his life is so miserable and why he's basically living in hell. They are punishing him. And in the book, Strindberg will read Swedenborg, a Swedish 17th century Christian mystic who had these visions of hell. And Swedenborg writes down these visions in a book. I don't remember the name exactly, but Strindberg reads this book, and he, to his shock, sees that everything Swedenborg wrote about actually is happening to him in his life. And this is what makes him convinced that I am literally in hell right now. I'm hell on earth. So another influence of this esoteric thinking is that Strindberg becomes convinced not just that he's persecuted by invisible forces, but that everything in this world which happens to him is synchronistically and symbolically connected. There is no chance. Everything that happens, even something as banal as the flight of a bird from a tree, becomes a symbol for these forces communicating with him, making a joke with him. So as if being persecuted by invisible forces wasn't bad enough, Strindberg also becomes convinced that he is being followed by literal people who are trying to kill him. So one day Strindberg is in his room writing and relaxing, and he suddenly hears piano music playing from down in the street or in another room. And this frightens him because he notices, or he remembers in the piano music, that this is being played by one of his acquaintances, a Russian named Popovsky, who he had met early in Berlin. And in some strange way, he draws the conclusion now that this Popovsky, this Russian guy, Popovsky, has come to Paris to kill him. And one of the ways this Popovsky is going to kill him, that Strindberg becomes convinced that Popovsky has now checked in to the hotel room next to his and is, via some electric machine, pumping electric shocks into his body. So one scene, he's just lying in his bed and he just feels this extreme electric shock. And so Strindberg is terrified, and so he asks the hotel lobby to change rooms, and they say, yeah, you can change rooms, but the only room that is available is the one is the one under Popovsky, his enemy, which of course Strindberg sees not as chance but as the intervention of these invisible evil forces who want to kill him. So now he has the room under Popovsky, and he hears a thud, something drop on the floor, and he concludes that this, of course, must be him hiding the electric machine. And this is sort of Strindberg in this whole book. He is seeing all these signs and drawing these absurd conclusions about them. They are actions directed to persecuting him. So what I love about this book is the drama. It's full of dramatic happenings. It's basically the opposite of a boring story where nothing happens. Every small detail, every sign becomes this symbol of this bigger dramatic story. In every street corner, something crazy is about to happen. In every street corner, there's someone who's trying to kill him, persecute him. Strindberg is full of paranoia. So there's full of drama, which is super entertaining. And another thing that I love about this book, which is connected to the dramatic theme, is the pace of the book. So in every paragraph, in every sentence, you have something incredibly dramatic, crazy happening. And it's not just like one part of the book. It's every sentence, every paragraph, just on and on and on and on. There's this high pace of drama, which makes it entertaining and full of life in every page. There's no part of the book where you're bored or where nothing happens. Just constant being bombarded with these hilarious, dramatic, absurd scenes. So as an example of this pace, I'll read to you guys the first sentence of the first paragraph, so the first 2 pages in the book. So the book begins like this. It was with a feeling of savage glee that I returned homewards from the Gare du Nord, where I parted from my little wife. So next paragraph. When I got as far as Café de la Régence, I sat down at a table at which I had often sat with my wife, my beautiful wardress, who had spied upon my soul day and night, had guessed my secret thoughts, kept watch over the developments of my ideas, observed with jealous resentment the striving of my spirit towards the unknown. Next paragraph. Back once more in my miserable student's room in the Latin Quarter, I delved into my trunk and drew forth from their hiding place 6 crucibles of fine porcelain which I had robbed myself to buy. Next paragraph. Night fell, the flames of hell rose from the burning sulfur, but towards morning I had ascertained the presence of carbon and sulfur, previously regarded as an elementary substance. So this last sentence refers to his alchemical experiments, but basically these sentences which I read to you guys was just from the first 2 pages, and you just see this incredible pace. First he's leaving his wife, he sits down at a cafe, wanders the streets, and then goes back to his room to experiment with alchemy. There's so much happening in just these few pages, and basically the whole book is like this, just constant. So a really good quote which embodies Strindberg's dramatism and the pace is, he writes, something, of course, miserable is happening to him, and then something else miserable happens to him. And he writes, I had only jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. So as he's trying to escape from this inferno, he's just digging his grave. He's just jumping from the frying pan into the fire, from something less worse to even something more worse. And this is a sort of a brilliant image of the book. He's just jumping from one absurd scene into another. And as we're reading this, we can't help but laugh, even though what he's describing is his tremendous suffering. There's something comedic in it because it's so absurd. We can't really take him serious. I mean, he's making gold in his hotel room, and he thinks that invincible forces are persecuting him, and also this Russian guy named Popovsky who's trying to kill him via electric currents. It's just so absurd, and we can't take it seriously, and it just becomes so comedic, and that's why I love this book. It's truly a funny book. So in this Inferno of Strindberg's, he seriously worries that he's going insane, or at least his friends around him are worrying that he's being insane. And this is another thing Strindberg becomes paranoid of, is that his friends are trying to lock him in a mental asylum. So an interesting question that a biography of Strindberg's life raises is, was Strindberg actually bordering on insanity? Was he crazy in this period of his life called the Inferno period? And there's reasons to raise these questions because the author in this biography reads through Strindberg's letters during this time of his life, where he shows complete signs of being sane, of dealing with ordinary tasks and communications in his life, showing no signs of insanity. And I don't think Strindberg was insane. I think that he was a genius. And why is he a genius? Because he's able to construct a myth around himself. The myth of this crazy artist, author. He is, with his writing abilities, able to create this mythic image of himself and to sort of mold and shape reality into his own desire. I think that he could not have written this book and made it so good and funny if he was not conscious of how other people would perceive him. So he's very aware and conscious of this, and this is a sign that he wasn't just totally insane. He had a lucid awareness of what he was doing, what he was writing, what scenes to put in order to construct this dramatic story and this myth of himself as this paranoid, genius, mad artist, which is sort of like an archetype. So I mentioned in the beginning of this video that this time around the year 1900 is a very interesting period with this explosion of creativity. And also a dream and a vision and a hope for creating something beautiful and great in the future. This time is before it's just right before the World War I, which in European history is sort of this great destroyer of European civilization. So before the World War I, there was this hope that people could use machines and new technologies to create a better society. But of course, what World War I teaches us that these machines were instead used to bring about enormous amounts of destruction. So towards the end of the book, Strindberg makes he has a really interesting experience where I think it really embodies the zeitgeists of this time's hope for the future, of something brilliant being there in the future that European society was almost able to achieve, but which was later on cut off or destroyed by World War I. So Strindberg is out on a walk. As I let my eyes stray over the lunatic asylum and trying to catch sight of the blue streak in the distance that is the sea, I fancy that I am on the lookout for the new era that is coming, the new religion of which the world is dreaming. So in the end of the book, Strindberg converts to Catholicism, and this sort of ends this hellish time, this religious crisis, and sort of brings about a consolation to him. And he sees in Catholicism, it's almost as if Catholicism is this new religion that he's talking about. He writes, "The tremendous strides that Catholicism has made in America, England and Scandinavia are a prophecy of a great reconciliation that is to come. The Greek Orthodox Church too has recently been stretching out a hand to the West." So here we see that the world is reconciling, coming together. Something good is about to happen. So that was Strindberg's Inferno, and I hope you guys are now interested, that I've stimulated your interest in this book and that you read it, because it's a funny, dramatic book that really is, as you can say, a page turner. You never know the next crazy thing that's going to happen on the next page. On the next page, Popovsky might be standing there with an electric machine, or an invincible demon is trying to kill him, or something crazy is at the next page, in the next street corner, with his wanderings in Paris.